Right, let's look at this now. It's just in. The City of Ekurhuleni's Executive Mayor Sivuyile Ngodwana has announced his 10-member mayoral committee. For more on this, now let's talk to EFF Gauteng chairperson Nkululeko Dunga, also leading that caucus in the Ekurhuleni Council. Nkululeko, good evening. Good to have you with us tonight. It is literally just come out now, and we are beginning to put the picture together. But what's your immediate reaction to this announcement, which sees you as MMC for Finance?
No, thanks, Babu Mzuli, for affording us an opportunity to speak to society. As the EFF, we welcome the outcomes of the composition of the mayoral committee, not because of its expression of some of the most seasoned cadres and fighters of the economic freedom fighters, but because of the collective approach of understanding that there is institutional memory with some of the councillors coming from the ANC who thoroughly understand governance, but also from a perspective that indeed there are people who will be held to account and who would actually effectively execute decisions of council with principle and with the energy that is required to overturn the shortfalls that the previous governance of the DA actually brought us to.
Now, in December, the Gauteng province was reporting that Joburg and Ekurhuleni were 2 billion in the red. What is the situation right now, which largely is going to be the area that you're going to be responsible to actually oversee?
Look, in the immediate, what we'd have to do, particularly in finance, is to go on an aggressive campaign of a revenue enhancement exercise that is looking at the round about approximately 1.9 million rand in terms of the debtors book that would have to zoom into, particularly of industries that have for years not been paying their rates and taxes, water and electricity, as opposed to the conventional method of actually doing cut-offs in townships. So that's in the main what we have to do. But also, the books are currently standing at about 300 million in terms of what we currently have as cash flow in our own bank accounts, and we would obviously have to increase that so that it's well in line with the National Treasury recommendation of 31 days. We're currently standing about 9-10 days or so.
So from what I currently see, but at first glance, and I'm sure there'll be more revealed as I go in, it's almost an equal spread of members of the economic freedom fighters and members of the ANC. What happened to the other minority parties as far as MMC positions?
Well, we still have the executive mayor who comes from the minority party, and he forms part of the mayoral committee that he has just announced. So they are well represented as well there as part of the mayorship office. And you would note that even in the legislature as well, there is a very high representation as well of the other minority parties outside the ANC and the EFF who form part of the composition of holding the executive to account. So there's a role that we all ought to play. And we cannot all be executing in terms of being part of the mayoral committee. Now those would have to be tasked with the task of actually doing oversight on our work so that we really account and there are checks and balances to how we actually enforce systems and enforce accountability. So
was that part of the agreement, I suppose, with the ANC that you would occupy 5 mayoral committee seats and they will occupy 5, and of course the mayor will be that of the AIC?
It's a combination of many things. Yes, it's one of them is engagement and thorough engagement, robust engagement in terms of the composition of the executive. But it's also extremely related as well to ideological stances. So it's a combination of many things that informs this particular decision, and it took a lot of discussion. You would have noted rather that we actually elected the mayor last week Thursday, and between then and now, it's almost an entire week that has gone past to be where we are at now. And we're comfortable with the decision that has been taken. And we're actually as equally comfortable that all other opposition parties, including the ANC, would appreciate the time and space that we find ourselves in and the robust engagements that has actually delivered this well-composed executive.
How does this, I think, largely of interest to the people of Ekurhuleni, impact on the stability of the metro at this particular point? Does this represent a move towards stability and not the back and forth that we have been seeing, at least for the last couple of months?
Yeah, majorly the instability of the city was attributed towards the DA, who actually directed majority of their time and the resources of the state towards their white dominant constituencies and suburban areas, as opposed to servicing the rest of society, or servicing everywhere equally, in as much as they engage in service delivery programs in suburban areas. So would have a genuine shift from that approach of the DA, which should create instantly some stability amongst members of society, but amongst the functionings and the basic functionings of the municipality. The second one is it was caused by a composition of the Democratic Alliance, whom themselves, in their own coalition agreements, are extremely unstable. You would note that Action SA in itself has actually removed themselves away from the Democratic Alliance in many of the decisions that have been undertaken in council, and there's always fragmented and friction that exists between, at times, the DA and the Patriotic Alliance, and so that part of the coalition was extremely unstable, and they could have never rendered any stability. In this case, it makes it much more easier because between the EFF and the ANC in itself, we command about 51.5% of council representation, meaning that the onus is genuinely with the ANC and the EFF to ensure that the stability of the legislature and council is upheld, and ensuring well that it equates to service delivery that is given to our people with the simple majority that we would have between the two of us. So the only instability politically that would ever exist is if there are any fundamental and critical differences between ourselves and the ANC,
right.
And to be where we are and having composed with the interaction of many other minority parties like the Super 7 and so forth, and equally the ANC from the EFF's point of view, we're extremely confident that we should not be having any instability, particularly even with the announcement of the executive in its current form.
Let's leave it there. Appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming on. EFF Gauteng chairperson Nkululeko Dunga, now the MMC for Finance in the city of Ekurhuleni.